Hey friends, what's up? Welcome or welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're talking about all things slow living. I kind of wanted to do a slow living 101 and also highlight how I like to approach slow living in a more realistic and accessible way. I think when I first started my slow living journey, I felt like I wouldn't have been able to really obtain that kind of lifestyle because I was living in the middle of a major city and it just didn't seem accessible enough to me at the time. But as I go on in my personal slow living journey, I have learned a lot about accessibility and just making slow living much more realistic for the average person, the everyday person, and not necessarily people that have the access to kind of live off the land or move out in the middle of nowhere and stuff like that, which I think is sort of like a traditional way of looking at slow living. But yeah, let's get to it. So the first thing I want to spotlight is intention and mindset. So I think on your slow living journey, the first thing that you really need to do is have your mindset be in a place where you're open and willing to new perspectives, to changes, to all sorts of different things that you are going to learn, because you're going to learn a lot about yourself in the slow living journey and you want to be mentally prepared for that. So if you're not in the headspace where you feel confident that this is going to work out for you, or if you're in a headspace that is not willing to be open about change or be patient in general, you're not exactly getting set up for success there. And as someone who was personally very impatient in the past, that was definitely a limitation for me when I was in my slow living journey. If I wasn't able to kind of break the barriers between me and my lack of patience, I don't think I would ever be in the place that I am right now. That's a good place to start. And then intention. What exactly does intention mean? So the literal definition of it is to have an aim, an objective, a purpose, and we can look at that on a very large scale. If we think about it, it can be something as like world peace. But of course, in your personal slow living journey, we're talking about the individual. We're talking about you as an individual. So you have to be shifting your mindset and looking at your individual life with intention. What is your purpose? What is your aim? What is your objective? What are things that fulfill you? And while world peace may be one of those things, I'm talking about things that are very concrete and very individual to you as a person based off of your experiences, your life, etc., all the things in between. So starting in this really good, open and patient and willing mindset is really going to set you up for a good start in your slow living journey. Once you are in the right mindset, or you're at least working towards it, this is the point where you are going to sit with yourself, literally sit with yourself, enjoy alone time, and learn. Just learn everything that you can about yourself. This is not going to happen overnight. This is not going to happen over the weekend. This is a continuous journey, and I should also put a disclaimer out there that I am personally on a journey. This is not something that I'm just crossing off of a checklist and then I'm done forever, and that's the same for you if you're on a slow living journey. It's a journey, it's ever changing, and it's always going to adapt. It's always going to adjust as time goes on and your life changes in however many ways. So you're going to be sitting with yourself a lot more often at the very least. But if you haven't been sitting with yourself at all, now is a good time to start. When you sit with yourself, and what I mean by sitting with yourself, I mean learning about yourself and what you value as an individual. Again, this is you as an individual. If you have a partner, if you have a family, that's also, factors in you as an individual, but we're talking about you here. This is your journey, and your fulfillment ultimately comes from within you, right? So learn more about yourself. Learn about what exactly you value. And this can be something as large as, why is my mind coming to a blank? This can be something as large as like sustainability, but this can also get as small as like your morning cup of coffee. That is something that you really value. That is something that really brings you joy. And a good way of looking at this and trying to kind of pinpoint things that you value, if you have no idea where to start, think about this prompt that I constantly ask myself every single day, and I have proof. I do this on my TikTok every single day when I'm making my morning cup of coffee. I talk about what brings me joy in this given day. every single day, a daily joy. And this is going to help you think about things on such a large scale. Something that is bringing you joy in the day can be as small as your morning cup of coffee. It can be as big as, you know, spending more quality time with your family, and anything in between, right? So sitting with yourself, discovering these things is going to be a process that is so valuable here, and it's going to basically shape the way that you structure your slow living journey from this point forward. So we've got the mindset, we've got our personal values, or at least we're working on them continuously. Let's move on to the next step. That next step is to prioritize your said values. Again, this is ever changing, so ways that you're going to prioritize these values are going to be dynamic. It's going to look different depending on what it is, but find ways to prioritize them. What this essentially does is take things that bring you joy and puts them into your daily routines. It puts them in the forefront of your life, in your perspective on a daily. That makes your life a lot more fulfilling in that way, if you think about it in very like plain terms. I hope that makes sense. The first thing is romanticizing your life. This can come off as super cliche and somewhat cringe depending on who you are, but I'm here to tell you to break out of that boundary, break out of that mindset, not just within yourself, but what you feel other people are, you know, saying about you, and just do your thing. Just romanticize whatever it is that you want to, because it's your life at the end of the day. It's you that matters when it comes to what you're romanticizing. And if it brings you joy, if it's something that fulfills you internally, externally, whatever it may be, why not? Don't feel guilty about it. Don't feel bad about it. I promise you that 1, people are paying less attention than you think. And 2, it's your life. You do what you want. You do what makes you happy. And in return, you are definitely going to reap the benefits, especially mentally in your mental headspace, when you simply just do what you want because it makes you happy. I also came out with a blog post this week where I talked about 10 ways to romanticize your mornings. So if you need some ideas, it's on my blog. I'll link it down below. Another thing you can do to prioritize your values is changing and or adjusting your environment. So I kept this pretty vague because, again, I want to keep this as accessible as possible. Some people do not have the opportunity to just move out in the middle of nowhere. Some people have jobs that they need to like actually get to. They have family that they actually need to be in proximity with. So there's so many different factors. So it's not always attainable and accessible for someone to just move out in the middle of nowhere and just, you know, disappear and live off the land as traditional slow living lifestyle creators kind of showcase. So when I say change your environment, I mean if you have the opportunity to move out to somewhere that's a little bit more aligned with your values, definitely do so. In my personal example, I moved out of New York City because I had the opportunity to, and that definitely did a lot of help for me in my slow living journey. It actually kickstarted so much for me. But if you don't have that opportunity, you can definitely switch up the space or adjust the space that you're currently in so that it's set up to highlight your values. If your space is very cluttered and that doesn't necessarily bring you joy, do a bit of decluttering. If it's the vice versa and you're a bit of a maximalist, lean into that. Lean into what makes you happy and fill your space with it, literally and figuratively, your mental headspace as well. Those things are definitely going to externally give you the inspiration to continue to prioritize your values. And I personally think it's super important if you have a lot of distractions, for example, and you are able to kind of minimize those distractions and put more of a focus on your personal joys, that's really, really helpful. Okay, the last thing that you can do to prioritize your joys here is to set boundaries. This is so important, and I think it's a little bit more accessible because it all comes from within you, right? And I think a lot of my tips have to do with that, except for the environment thing. But yeah, setting boundaries has been a game changer for me. This is something that I have very, very recently implemented. Although I knew from the get-go and sitting with myself and learning more about myself that setting boundaries was always important, it wasn't until this year, to be honest with you, that I actually kept strict with those boundaries and I was firm with those boundaries. Now, boundaries can mean so many things. It can be environmental boundaries. It can mean work work-life balance boundaries. It can be toxic people in your life type boundaries. All of these things count, and you can start very, very small and work your way through your confidence level as you learn to keep those boundaries pretty firm. As you like continue on with your boundary setting kind of journey there, like your little mini side quest here in your slow living journey, if you think about it. That's exactly what I did. I started with work-life balance, and then I moved a little bit. I mean, of course, I did my big one, which was like physical distance, moving out of New York City, but then I also did work-life balance boundaries. I've done a lot of boundary setting with toxic people in my life. I've cut out a lot of people in my life, and that's a whole other conversation. I'm not saying to cut off everybody in your life, period, but yeah, boundary setting is really important because boundary setting allows you to really, again, fine-tune and focus on yourself as an individual and your joys, your priorities, and basically cutting out all of the stuff that does not bring you joy and cutting out the stuff that kind of harms you in maybe a subtle way or an extreme way, right? So try to be as firm as you can with this boundary setting goal. It's hard. Like I said, this has only started implementing with me in this year, and we're in the beginning of the year, so it's very new to me and it's hard, but I would say try your best. And if you need any help with that, definitely feel free to comment down below or send me a message. If you want to keep it a little bit more private, you can message me on Instagram, whatever it may be. But I do think that it is super, super important as well. All right, friends, that is all for this week's video. I really hoped you liked this 101 on slow living, and I hope it was accessible and realistic enough for you to actually take the tips that I talked about today and implement it in your life, or at least get started on them. It gets easier as time goes on. I promise you that. In my personal journey, it has been a very long and gradual journey, and to be honest with you, I wouldn't have it any other way. I've done a lot of learning and growing throughout the years, and it has been a very fulfilling experience, and it just gets better as time goes on. So leave your thoughts below in the comments, and again, if you want to chat with me privately, if some of these things are a little bit more sensitive and you don't want to share them publicly, you can always DM me on Instagram, and I'm happy to chat about all things slow living. But that is all for this week's video, and I will talk to you in next week's video.